Around these parts, we talk a lot about obsession and compulsion, which isn't news because this is a podcast about anxiety disorders. When compulsions are behavioral, you can see them, there's not a lot of questions about them. But when they are mental in nature, there's a lot of questions, starting with what on earth even is a mental compulsion. So let's talk about that today. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Anxious Truth. This is episode 337 of the podcast. We are recording in February of 2026, in case you are listening or watching in the future. Today, we are going to talk about mental compulsions. We have a special guest. That is Lauren Rosen. She is an OCD specialist and anxiety specialist practicing in California. She's a friend of mine, a clinician I greatly respect and trust, and she's an expert in this sort of thing. She just wrote a book called The Mental Compulsions Workbook for OCD. She's going to join us. We're going to talk about mental compulsions and try to take some of the mystery out of them. I am Drew Linsalata. I am the creator and host of The Anxious Truth. If this is your first time listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I hope you find the podcast or the YouTube channel helpful in some way. And of course, if you are a returning listener or viewer, welcome back. Thanks for hanging out today. I hope you get something out of today's episode. Before we bring Lauren on and talk about mental compulsions, just a very fast reminder that The Anxious Truth is more than just this podcast episode or this YouTube video. There's all the previous podcast episodes that came before it. There are low-cost workshops and courses. There are the books that I've written. There's the Disordered podcast that I do with Josh Fletcher every Friday. You can find that one at disordered.fm. But go check my website at theanxioustruth.com and avail yourself of all of the resources, many of which are free. And if there is a cost, it's very low-cost stuff. I think you'll get something out of it. Many people do. So check it out at theanxioustruth.com. So let's bring Lauren Rosen on. We're going to talk about mental compulsions. I will come back at the end to do a little wrap up and give you all Lauren's links. Let's get to it.
Hi, what up?
What up?
We are admittedly, folks, as I promised, Lauren Rosen is here with me. Lauren may be the second most frequent guest on The Anxious Truth after Joanna, possibly.
Wow.
This may tie you.
Honored.
Full disclosure, we are stumbling into this podcast episode, or at least I am. No, bear with us.
I stumble almost everywhere these days. It's just, I think, the nature of life.
We will get this right. Lauren, for anybody who has not heard us or you before, just Reader's Digest version, who the heck are you?
I am Lauren Rosen, and I am a licensed psychotherapist, primarily in California, though I've accrued a whole litany of other licenses because I hate that people have to start treatment all over again when they move. So there you go, and there you have it. So practice in a lot of different places now, and I have a podcast, Purely OCD. I have a small group practice, the Center for the Obsessive Mind, and I just wrote a book, as it turns out. Let's not forget. Oh my goodness, there it is in all its glory.
On YouTube, you saw the book.
That's so cool that you have that there. That Drew very graciously wrote a lovely blurb for, so thank you for that. I will say, and also working on some really fun mindfulness projects for anxiety disorders with you. So I guess that's my story.
True. Love it.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. So those of you who have seen Lauren on the podcast before, I will tell you what I say with most people. If you see Lauren on the screen with me and she says something, you can trust it implicitly. That is why she's here again and again and again. The person knows.
No pressure.
No pressure. Fix everybody if possible. Let us talk about mental compulsions, because Lauren's book that she just wrote, which was long overdue, by the way, for you to write a book, is called The Mental Compulsions Workbook for OCD. CBT and mindfulness skills to navigate intrusive thoughts and mental traps. What is a mental compulsion? Because I think many people are confused by this.
Yeah, and it's crucial to understand what in the world it is if you're going to identify it and do something differently about it. I think to define mental compulsion, we have to look at what a mental behavior is. And I think that there's not a lot of information out there about the fact that we're able to do things in our brains, like actively, which, we think of behaviors, we think of, especially in the context of OCD, we think of door checking, hand washing, tapping, other forms of ritual. Perhaps we think of reassurance seeking. But the idea that we could be doing something in our minds that we have any sort of agency around is pretty foreign to most people. in the realm of OCD or, as I mentioned, otherwise, right? Because we see these mental behaviors, unhelpful mental behaviors come up across a lot of different diagnoses, like depression, like other anxiety disorders, even in the context of eating disorders, right? Thinking can be a huge liability. And so when we're looking at, in the context of OCD, how this shows up, we see people trying to obtain certainty more often than not around questions, but doing so in their minds. So, of course, we know this, but like for somebody who's brand new to this world, that, you know, if somebody has a thought like, well, what if I didn't lock the door and somebody breaks into my house and steals everything or hurts somebody that I love, that they might find themselves going back to check the lock repeatedly to ensure that that's not the case.
Yeah,
physically, exactly. Mental compulsions are similar, right? Like there are ways to try to eliminate doubt and anxiety and uncertainty to obtain a sense of safety and security. And so we might see even somebody with that very same obsession around potentially having somebody invade their home and hurt somebody, go over a memory of having locked their door repeatedly. And the most challenging one, well, there are a lot of very challenging things about mental compulsions, but one of the more challenging pieces is that you can do it anywhere, right? And it can be so consuming as a direct result of that, right? Like I don't have to be standing by the door to keep reviewing the memory. And there are other things that people do, like sometimes people take pictures and all sorts of things or record things to make sure that so they can go back later and review it. But oftentimes we rely on our memories or on our ability to unpack things or analyze or debate things in our minds to try to get this certainty. So that's what a mental compulsion is. It's trying to, like, again, not always certainty, but oftentimes like trying to get rid of discomfort and distress, oftentimes associated with doubt and uncertainty, by doing things that are invisible to the naked eye.
Yes, we cannot see that. If you check your door, I can see you doing that.
Right.
If you're just looping through trying to remember if you checked your door, you could be doing that right now. I'd have no idea.
Right.
Yeah. You know what
I think, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I really love how you pointed out. It's like a sport that needs no equipment. Like running is great. You only need a pair of sneakers. You don't have to invest in a lot. Yeah, mental compulsions don't need a lot of investment. Do them anytime, anywhere, any chance you get.
Lucky us, huh?
Yeah, zero barrier.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But doesn't that make it seem like a good idea then? It's so easy to do. It's a readily available problem-solving thing, but is it problem-solving?
Well, here's the question. Yeah, how effective is it?
Right.
Actually, and I talk about this in the book. It's one of the concepts that I'm most interested in. Is Ed Watkins' work around rumination-focused CBT, and it's specifically around depression. But the difference between concrete and abstract thinking is that problem-solving is concrete. It is goal-directed, it's time-limited, it's action-oriented, right? And it's very specific, and it's present-focused versus this sort of big abstract questions like, well, why did I say something like that? What does that mean about me? Oftentimes Dr. Watkins talks about it as why type questions versus how type questions, but they're not always why or how. Right. But if you find yourself in these sort of big nebulous philosophical questions around like, well, how will I cope if something happens in the distant future? It's like, who knows? There are way too many variables that we can't possibly predict. And you could spin out forever trying to figure it all out, you know?
But I'm trying. I'm going to keep trying if I just think more.
Yeah, so that you get stuck forever in that loop, which robs you of the present, right? Like your connection with what's actually happening in your life.
Yeah. Now, there are mental compulsions that maybe aren't, people might say, well, they're the obvious ones. Like I count a certain sequence in my head, or I have to repeat certain words or song lyrics. Like I've heard all of those. Those might be more easier for people to recognize.
Perhaps because they are very like repetitive and ritualized in a way that it sort of mimics things like repeatedly washing your hands, repeatedly locking the door,
Sure.
that they're very, I don't know, yeah, they're repetitive
Yeah.
in a very stereotyped way. But I think that a lot of the mental compulsions that people might not recognize as compulsions involve things like rumination, analysis, worrying, right? The act of worrying, not to be confused with the feeling or emotion of worry. And mental review, mental rehearsal, mental debate, right? And I actually want to caution by saying these terms are all somewhat arbitrary and there's so much overlap because, especially within the realm of OCD, but I think this is true of any anxiety disorder, the perfectionism that often is associated can drive people to be like, well, which one is it? And the focus on trying to name it perfectly misses the point. The idea is, can we acknowledge that there's some process going on in your mind that is unhelpful, that is probably re-triggering, which I'm happy to talk more about, and that is actually taking you away from what matters most to you in this world.
Yeah. And what about? Wow, I can't believe I was going to start a question. But what about? Excuse me for the audience to do, but what about when I have the thought? So
I like it. I'm here
if I'm going to have repetitive mental compulsions, I may recognize those. Yes, you're right. Those are compulsions. I repetitively loop through my kids' birthdays to make sure that I'm not forgetting them, or I have a counting sequence or whatever. Yeah, I get those. I can see that there's compulsions.
Right. Or I say the same prayer 50 times, right? Like yeah.
That makes perfect sense. The ones that are a little bit trickier are the ones, so it's interesting when you say mental rehearsal. Okay, but mental rehearsal sometimes is a useful thing. So I think it becomes harder for people to identify whether, but am I doing it compulsively, or is it not? Is this a compulsion or is it not a compulsion?
Gosh.
So and they can be tricky, and that's where you run into the whole, I think, and I'm not sure what your feeling is on that. They can be harder to address because they often look like good ideas. So the positive belief in those type of compulsions, no, but that helps me, that prepares me, that protects me, that predicts, that problem solves. How do you know when it isn't working? Like,
such a good question. And I think you don't know. That's the reality. You don't know for sure. And I just say that as like, because you were sort of nodding to this fact that people can get very spinny about whether or not something is a mental compulsion. So to sort of preempt that, like, you don't, it's ultimately not so black and white as you're either doing a mental compulsion or you're engaged in helpful thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I ultimately, at the end of working with somebody, like when somebody is in recovery, I don't anticipate that they're never going to perform a mental compulsion. Because hyperfixating on never performing a mental compulsion would in itself is a compulsion, right? Like, it's like, oh, I have to monitor this perfectly so I never get lost in unhelpful thinking. It's like we all get lost in unhelpful thinking, even if you've never experienced an anxiety disorder or an OCD or any sort of mental health disorder, the chances are that you get lost in sort of reviewing the same experience over and over again and like sort of picking it apart and wishing. That's another mental compulsion that people often don't think about. So yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with that, actually, if I'm honest.
It makes sense. And we all engage in those. You're right. Even without an OCD or an anxiety disorder history, anybody who's ever said, I don't understand why I let that bother me so much. There you go. That's a person who is finding themselves revisiting an event or something that somebody said over and over and over, and they wish they weren't. Why is this bothering me? Why do I keep doing that? Every human being can identify with that.
Every human being. Yes.
Yeah.
And in fact, what we know from a neurobiological perspective is that the chemical reaction involved in an emotion only lasts 90 seconds. But if you continue to think about the thing that's causing the emotion, it prolongs it for, ongoing, right? So again, more evidence to suggest that lots and lots of people engage in unhelpful patterns of thinking. And the line between helpful and unhelpful isn't always clear. And so we kind of have to make our best guess. Sure. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I might miss something now if I drop this, or it might be helpful, or maybe I am forgetting something, and just 5 more minutes of this will get me the answer that I'm looking for. And I think you're right that there's a lot of misunderstandings about what is helpful and unhelpful in terms of thinking. In fact, I would say one of the misconceptions that comes up most to the people that I work with are surround self-flagellation, that beating up on yourself is some sort of an effective way of changing. It's a horrible strategy. I mean, you're like, no, it's great. It's great if you want to feel badly about yourself and not grow. That's what it's good for.
It was interestingly, that's really good if I want to feel bad about myself but not grow. Because I think sometimes people think that self-flagellation, which you're right, can be a mental compulsion. That's motivation, isn't it? If I just keep calling myself out and, oh man, I'm the worst, I guess something's got to change. Okay, but is anything actually changing? If it's not, then you're probably just engaging in a compulsion, mental compulsion.
Right. And again, not helpful for anyone. It's just not, like, self-flagellation is not helpful. I guess, like, one of the things that I'm most passionate about, which is sort of coming across as we're talking, is like a sort of transdiagnostic look at all of this. Because the reality is that unhelpful mental behaviors are unhelpful mental behaviors that cause pain and suffering to the people who engage in them. And so what we're talking about is, in terms of self-flagellation, I realize I've gone off on a little bit of a tangent here, as a compulsion, right? Is like that it's going to be somehow effective, as with many other mental compulsions. This misguided idea that they're going to be supportive is false, right? That's not actually what we see as effectively supporting growth or promoting learning or any of the things that might be believed about beating up on yourself. Self-compassion research shows that too. Oh. So anyway, and like I said, to just tie it back into mental compulsions, because I'm sure I could go on a whole other tangent around that subject. It's really interesting to me, but I think mental compulsions on the whole are unhelpful, right? Trying to resolve uncertainty related to what having a thought means about you, like, there is no answer to that. And certainly no answer in the depths of your mind, right? Like, there's an echo chamber in there. And if you keep thinking and thinking and trying to figure it out, you're going to realize other ways in which uncertainty exists. And maybe you'll for a moment get a glimpse of reassuring yourself, like, oh no, it's fine, because I'm a good person, right? So let's use an example. Like, if I have a thought, like, what if I want to harm my family? Yeah. And then I'm like, well, could I harm my family? And I start debating this question or excessively analyzing in my head or sort of ruminating about it, with the aim of trying to resolve this discomfort in me between having this thought and, like, but I don't want my family to be harmed, or do I, right? Like, this sort of back and forth.
You respond to the thought about, well, what if I harm my family? And you want to compulse to resolve that?
Right. Well, I think I was talking about the unhelpfulness of it all.
That's right. Well. How do you know? Right. But it's not going to be helpful because it's just going to have to repeat, right?
Right. Well, and that there's no, and what I was going to say is that you end up re-triggering yourself in the process. That's what I was going to say, is that, like, you're thinking, you're like, well, I've never hurt anyone before, right? Oh, okay. I'm not going to hurt anyone. And then it's like, but what about that one time when you said that mean thing? Maybe you're really a bad person. Maybe you're a sociopath. And all of a sudden we've got new possibilities that we weren't even thinking about before. And now we're off to the races trying to figure out whether or not we're a sociopath, right? So I think I will say, with mental compulsions, they're uniquely positioned to be re-triggering because there's nothing concrete about them, right? It's like the mind.
They make up anything it wants. There's no constraints.
No. Yeah. But your imagination. And by the way, like the most creative people, right? Like that we find in anxiety disorders and OCD.
But why would a person what kind of person even has that kind of thought? Like the fact it's the thought that triggered the compulsion that's ultimately going to come back again. Yeah, but I did have the thought. I want to ask this or get your opinion on this, because I guess I know my audience enough. I think people sometimes get confused about what the difference between the compulsion and the obsession. So they will say,
Totally.
yeah, but I keep having that thought.
Yes.
Having a thought is not the compulsion.
No, it is not. And that's such an important piece. And I will say that in practice, they kind of can bleed together.
Yep.
But the main discrepancy is whether it's an active process.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about obsessions, we're largely talking about automatic internal experiences like thoughts, images, urges. And when we're talking about mental compulsions, we're talking about active processes that are trying to sort something out or fix something. So it's the difference between having a thought pop into your head, like, I need to go to the grocery store, and then making a list about what you need to get, like, and sort of mentally tracking through the aisles, like, oh, right, I need to get that thing. And, oh, we're out of that thing. That's that. I'm thoughts versus thinking is really what we're looking at there. And again, in practice, it's sort of messier than that, I think. But once you catch yourself, you're probably already like thinking.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think it was you. It was either you or Joanna that did the whole, like,
Numbers.
If I say what's 15 plus 2, you just say 17, which is a thought. If I say what's the square root of 17, now you're thinking.
Yeah.
17 was a thought. Square root of 17. Now I'm actually thinking. I don't know the answer, by the way. Sorry, Mr. Newcomb. Can't solve it.
No, I have. I need a calculator. I need one of those TI-89 calculators to solve for that. I think. I think what it's like. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I could go off on that, but and I even something like as I'll go simpler, even at like 1 + 1 is 2, right? Because that's those basic addition tables, they're rote memory at a certain point for anyone who's been in the education system, versus if you say, okay, 523 times 446, right? That's going to take a lot more calculation. Now, I could actually do that one without a calculator, but it would take a while.
And that's an active process. Now you're thinking.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
This may be, no, you know what? It's not a tangent at all. But I think it's also where sometimes in the language, and forget pop culture language, that's usually off when it comes to anxiety disorders and OCD, but even in our own community, which we share so much of the community, I'm obsessing over. No, you're obsessed with, you are compulsing over, right?
Correct.
Isn't it? I think that matters too when we talk about mental compulsions. Having a repetitive thought does not mean that might be something you are obsessed with, but you are not obsessing. You are compulsing.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's actually the first chapter of my book starts off that way, as like people will say, I've been obsessing all day. And that act of like that obsessing actually involves two pieces. One is this passive process of having a thought, and the other is the active process of thinking. And it's crucial because we treat these two experiences in very different ways. We have to accept our awareness of thoughts. If we don't, then we're going to resist them and we're going to try and get rid of them, oftentimes through these mental behaviors, or we call them mental compulsions in OCD. But yeah, if you accept them, then you have this freedom to make a different choice and to not try to resist them through these behaviors that detract from life. I was going to say something in addition to that. If it comes back to me, I will.
It'll come to you at some point. So, of course, the $1 million question will be, okay, fine, that's what mental compulsions are. It is a workbook that you wrote. So,
yes,
you are now working with a client. I'm your client again, and I have this mental compulsion problem. You hand me your workbook. What are we going to try to do about it? Now, we cannot fix you in a podcast, but generally speaking, what's the approach you're going to take?
So, first of all, it's heavily influenced by mindfulness throughout. And I think actually, interestingly, what you mentioned about language, I think it's really important to help people to develop an awareness non-judgmentally of their inner landscapes. And so helping people by first saying like, okay, well, what's a thought and what's thinking and what's feeling, which is so simple.
No pressure. Shine feelings.
Define feeling. I'm sure my clients must, like during the education part, they must be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this wrong. But it's fascinating how simple these questions are, but how difficult they are to answer. So understanding, okay, like when we break it down, thoughts are these words or ideas or images that pop into our minds, that feelings are these physical sensations in our bodies that all together we like the amalgam amounts to, oh, I feel anxious. And the behaviors, mental or otherwise, are the active process of trying to address the automatic thoughts and feelings that came in the first place. So understanding that basic setup allows us to more effectively tango with those internal experiences. So understanding like, okay, well, some experiences we're going to accept and some we're going to shift, right? These behaviors, those internal experiences, we're going to do something different. But mindfulness is beautifully poised to support with both. And so I'd say the crux of the workbook, I do talk about cognitive skills, like I mentioned, around rumination focus, CBT, around just regular cognitive restructuring, with a huge caveat asterisk that we're not trying to disprove our feelings. We're just trying to decide how it makes sense to behave in the face of thoughts and emotions. But the most of the workbook is about how do we cultivate a non-judgmental awareness of thoughts and feelings, and how do we support ourselves in shifting attention when we find that it's gone somewhere that is spending all of this time doing things that we don't really want it to be doing, right? Like if I want my attention to be on the conversation that I'm having with you, Drew, but my attention drifts off, as it's wont to do, to, I don't know, any number of things. Like, what am I going to do this weekend? Or what am I, like, what, am I a bad person? Or whatever the question that may come up could be. That learning how to say like, oh, look, I'm thinking, and bringing my attention back is a really crucial skill, especially when it comes to mental compulsion. So a lot of the book is just how do you stop thinking without suppressing thoughts or resisting thoughts, which sounds like a paradox, but actually isn't.
No, everybody that tries to do it at first is like, this, what? There's always that side eye, like, don't think about it, but actually think, but don't think. Like, it is confusing. This is one of those experiential things, right? Like you can't figure out with words how to do this. Like you must experiment and try different things. And then, oh yeah, this is what it feels like to resist a mental compulsion.
Right. Like, oh, I understand. Like I'm that gripping sensation in my jaw and in my hands. Like I'm trying to push this thought forcibly from my body, and it's actually causing me a lot of suffering. Can I soften in the face of this, right? Like it is very experiential. We could talk toward it, but yeah, it requires a lot of practice, which is why it's a workbook,
That makes sense.
I will say I've read a lot of workbooks in my time, and oftentimes it's just to, like support my learning as a clinician and help me help more people, but also like as a person with lived experience. And the temptation is always to just skip right past all the experiential stuff. It's like, yeah, I get it. Cool. Like, but conceptual learning and experiential learning are such different beasts. So yeah.
No, that's true. It's amazing how similar, like there's a lot of MCT here. Like I need to become aware of when the CAS has been activated, and then I work on moving my attention around. So like, there's a reason why this stuff all starts to dovetail in the end. Right. So
totally. I've often thought, and because I don't think that there's much in the way of research, not anything that I've seen, that like where MCT is applied to people with OCD, specifically with mental compulsions, but it seems like a natural fit. I think one of the things I love about ACT, which is so much my school of thought, is the emphasis on flexibility. And I think when you're dealing with a disorder that is as rigid as OCD or most anxiety disorders, to really recognize the problem with any rule set, that there's always going to be exceptions, and to develop that ability to be with fluidity like that is really crucial. So when we get too bogged down and like, I'm going to name this, or I'm going to like, what I mean? We can lose the thread, I think.
I think especially with mental compulsions, because like what we were saying earlier, they're so tricky. The ones that almost look, repetitive mental compulsions we all get, but the ones that look like they might be helpful and a good idea, or they speak to my identity as a problem solver or whatever, are harder.
Yes.
If you go into a manualized, like very MCT type of thing,
Yep.
as opposed to, but on the flip side, ACT, which I'm also a huge, I kind of use principles of both. But I think when Stephen Hayes did it, it was literally intentionally very amorphous. We'll just use a lot of metaphors. There is no technique in this.
Right.
Probably really helpful, harder to grasp, but more helpful in the end, right?
For sure. And I think that there are a lot of techniques, but they're used very fluidly.
Yes.
There's no right way to do it. And I do think the ethos of the approach is important when we're looking at dealing with problems related to rigidity, is that it kind of has to be flexible. Like a rigid solution isn't going to support a rigid problem. And I do think that that's where even and I love ERP, but traditional ERP can really lose the thread sometimes. It's like, okay, well, if I just do this, then this is going to happen. It's not that linear, and that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for how can we interrupt mental compulsions more quickly so that we can get back to living life, and how much more time can we spend like really connected with the present moment, with the people around us, and to what matters to us. But yeah, I think that there's so much overlap between the different theories from my vantage point. We're many times just using different language to speak to the same ideas. But I do see where MCT and some of the, like getting particular about things. I've seen so many people who've been through DBT who get perfectionistic about applying different DBT and like, well, what's the right DBT skill to apply here? And what if I'm not doing it right? It's like, oh gosh, well, I don't know. I
think the person a little more prone to engage in mental compulsions is definitely more vulnerable to that interpretation too. Is this right?
Yeah.
Is that thought right? Tends to lead to mental compulsion. So am I thinking correctly? Is that the right thought? Was that an avoidant thought?
It's so spinny. It's so tough. I will say too, I really appreciate what you brought up about identity with mental compulsions. And to be honest, there's only so much space in any given book, and I had to cut a lot. But I think that the question of identity is really important. And certainly we do get a lot of positive reinforcement societally from being thoughtful, right? Oh, you're so sensitive. You're so thoughtful. You're so smart. You think so much, right? Like that keeps people on that train. And to understand that it's kind of a tough pill to swallow, actually, but recognizing that actually reviewing something over and over and over again in a way that might be perceived as thoughtful is oftentimes much more self-oriented than anyone would care to believe, right? That it's like, how do I make sure that that person's not mad at me is not actually thoughtful? It's very like, sort of inwardly focused.
That's exactly right. I will often invite people, they laugh, but then I think they're also not happy with it. I'll say things like, at the end of a session, I might say, okay, homework would be before I see you next week, I want you to worry as much as you can about me. Like really worry for my well-being because I think you like me and I like you. So really, really worry about that. The next week, I'll tell you how much I felt that. Spoiler alert, 0. Like you did it for you, not for me.
Right.
So it can be really hard. I think the point there is it is hard to decide to dismantle or abandon your mental compulsions.
It is.
They speak to your identity, but that makes me a good mom, especially those worry prediction. I'm going to anticipate the worst. But, if you walked up to somebody, Lauren, and said, oh my goodness, my daughter had her first day of school. I was worried sick all day. You might get positive feedback for that. Oh, mom. I know, mama. It's really hard, right?
Totally.
I'm sorry, mamas. But that reinforces the idea that it was not helpful at all to your daughter. It meant nothing to her.
Or me.
Or you.
And actually, my thoughts could have been dedicated to her in a much more effective way, right?
Probably.
Not that they need to be, but like I think if I had spent a fraction of that time thinking, is there anything nice that we could do together this upcoming weekend? Like coming up with a concrete plan, that would have been way more supportive of her well-being and mine.
Yep.
So
I think I'm going to go cupcakes for first day of school and go get them and have a much better
plan.
All right. Very good. We could talk about this for hours. But...
We could. It's so nuanced. And I have to say, for anyone who's listening, like, I think as somebody who has lived experience in this realm, it's so confusing when you're in the throes of it. And this idea that like you're doing something, but then there's something that like is happening that you can't control. And And then you're trying to control the things that you can't control, like thoughts and feelings, while you think that you have no control over the ruminating and the mental review. Like, it's so hard when you're first entering this world. And I think that if you can be gentle and kind with yourself, as we were talking about, it's good that we talked so much about like self-compassion practice, is like, yeah, it's a lot. And nobody prepares anyone for this. Well, truly, when I first was introduced to these concepts, which was in the context of my own recovery, it was mind-boggling to me that I was doing anything actively or that I had any agency in my own mind. So be gentle, like it's a hard road, and it's possible to live a big, beautiful life, even if you have this strong desire to keep consulting your own mind over and over again about the same things.
True. In the end, you will learn that the questions you're answering or trying to answer were never needed to be asked. You're not trying to answer, trying to learn that you never had to ask or can stop. So if you guys hang in for my little wrap up, I'll always come back and do a wrap up. I'll hold the book up again in front of YouTube. It's the Mental Compulsion Workbook. Do I have it for OCD? But I will put links in the description below, or wherever you happen to be. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it. You're welcome here anytime.
Thank you for having me. I love being here.
All right. Hang in there. I'll come back and wrap it up in a second.
We are back. And when I say we're back, I mean sitting at the exact same desk that I was at 30 seconds ago when I stopped the camera and then started it again. So let's do a little wrap up first. Thank you to Lauren Rosen for appearing on this week's episode, taking time to explain mental compulsions and share her wisdom on the topic. There's a reason why Lauren has been on this podcast so many times and will be on this podcast again, I'm sure, in the future. She is trustworthy. She is an expert. She is expertly trained. She has lived experience. She is not selling snake oil. If you are not following along with Lauren Rosen, I suggest you do that, starting on her Instagram at The Obsessive Mind. And her practice is called the Center for the Obsessive Mind. She's practicing in California. The book that she wrote is called the Mental Compulsions Workbook for OCD. I will put all of Lauren's links in the podcast description or on my website, if you're on my website listening or watching, or in the YouTube video description. So check it out, follow along with her, tell her I sent you. So I hope you found today's episode on mental compulsions helpful. Mental compulsions are really difficult to identify sometimes. They can look like things that are just good ideas, but they turn out not to be good ideas. So even after this episode, or even if you buy Lauren's book and check it out, you may still wind up being very confused about mental compulsions and not even sure how to identify them when you're engaging with them. That is okay. Like Lauren said, you have to be patient. You have to be kind. It can be really helpful to have professional help when you're dealing with this kind of thing. But if you're trying to go it alone, totally fine. I get you. Just be patient, because this is a very fuzzy, amorphous, very nuanced topic, and it's hard for everybody to put their brain around this. So take what you will from today's episode. If it gets you started along the path to addressing your mental compulsions, or helped you at least understand the concept a little better, then we'll take that as a win. So that is episode 337 with Lauren Rosen in the books. Thanks for hanging out. I will ask a favor, as I do at the end of every episode. If you're listening as a podcast episode on Apple or Spotify, leave a 5-star rating if you really dig The Anxious Truth. And if you really, really dig it, maybe take a second and write a quick review, just a couple of lines or a paragraph to tell people why you like this podcast. It helps the podcast. It helps other people find it. And then other people maybe get the help that they need. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, consider liking the video. If you've made it this far, I assume you like it. And if you really like the video and you're not subscribed to the channel, please hit the button and hit the notification button while you're at it. It's a little click for you, but it means a lot to me, because it tells YouTube that you like when I do this. And if they don't know that you like that I do this, they just bury me in the algorithm, because anxiety disorders aren't terribly entertaining. We know that, but it is important that we have conversations about this. So hopefully this has been helpful. I will be back again in another 2 weeks with an episode of The Anxious Truth. If you want podcast episodes every week, check out Disordered. I do that podcast every Friday with Josh Fletcher. That's at disordered.fm. I will also put a link on the webpage, or the video description, or the podcast show notes. Check that out. Again, I will remind you, if you make one small change today toward what you care about in life and away from the fear, if you are willing to take a tiny, brave leap of faith, to take a risk, to not make your anxiety or your panic or your OCD or your discomfort the most important thing in the room, and instead act based on what is most important to you, you are winning. Those tiny little steps add up over time. They teach us lessons that are vital to getting our lives back. You can do it. If I didn't think you couldn't do it, I would stop doing this podcast, yet here I am every other week or every week. That's the case of the other podcast. Thanks for listening. Hang in there. I'll see you in 2 weeks with some other topic. Don't know what, but I'll be here. Thanks for hanging out.